Well, looky here. You are listening to someone who is bold, authentic, diverse, unpredictable. Baby, I am unapologetically Ramon, and you have entered my zone, the QB zone, baby. Hello, somebody.
And there's no objection.
Something that is very important for me to talk about and just me to ensure that I'm always educated about, as well as our community, and that is financial literacy. I think a lot of times in our community, we do not properly educate each other on financial literacy and why that is important to ensure that that is ingrained in our lifestyle choices. We talk about getting education, we talk about being healthy, but a lot of times we are not teaching our youth about financial literacy, and then we grow up to be adults that are not properly educated on financial literacy and just simple stability with our finances. And so I'm very excited today that I have someone who is really an expert when it comes to dealing with money and financial literacy and just prospering and putting things in place, the right pieces in place to really grow and prosper financially. And that is someone who, oh God, I think we've been friends now for about 15, 16 years since '04, no, '05. And he has been an expert to me. I feel like he's an expert when it comes to just the financial industry and the financial market. And that is a wonderful, wonderful person and frat brother as well, Stephone Coward. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So I just really want to jump right into it. You said what?
You're too kind. You're too kind. With
so silly. So I just want to jump right into it because just learning about finances always excites me because I think it's very important to ensure that your finance is in place and your credit. I remember at a young age, my grandmother told me you'll never be broke if you got good credit. So I learned the importance at a young age of having your credit straight and having your finance in place. So I want to talk to you first about financial literacy. You know, I feel like it's a key component and extremely important. And as I stated earlier, it's not always taught to our community. How would you explain financial literacy and why is it so vastly important?
So the way that I would explain financial literacy is making sure that you have an understanding of the financial resources that are out there to be able to digest it in a way that you can empower your own lives. Just like with any other type of, you want to be literate. So it's like you want to have an understanding of what's going on. So like when it specifically comes to the financial market, it's like you see so many people who have potential issues with their banking relationships, from the types of accounts that they're in, to where they end up in a scenario so where they're maybe getting overdraft fees, or they have an account that's closed out and they're on something called a system called check systems. And I feel that with a proper understanding of how banking services work, how do the tools work that are at your disposal, you can be able to have a better experience. This is not to say that there haven't been scenarios to where banks have engaged in predatory practices, but if you at least can have an understanding of the service that you're using, I feel like that will help you through that scenario. So when it comes to like what people describe as financial literacy, that what they have described as financial literacy for at least like the last 15 to 20 years is having the understanding of what is a checking account, what is a savings account, how many debits can you take out of a savings account before you start getting charged, when it comes to using your debit card, how long is something going to be held on your account, before it takes away from your available funds? Does it pop back up on your account? And then you thinking that you have one type of balance and you have another. How do you balance your checkbook now? You see, I'm using terminology from way back in the day. I don't know how many people are still balancing their checkbooks, but that was something that that was important to having that understanding of financial literacy. Now, because of how technology has advanced, you're not running into some of those scenarios to where people are not, they don't have access to be able to know what is in their account at all times. You have access to online banking now. You have mobile banking apps for you to be able to get a real-time understanding of what's in your account. So financial literacy has been just teaching people the basic components of banking and knowing what tools are available, what is credit, what are loans, these things like that. So there's been a lot on the book, and this is how I kind of pull it full circle. And here's where my stance is when it comes to financial literacy. Banks have been required. There's something called the Community Reinvestment Act, to where you're supposed to make sure that you are giving back to the community that you're serving. And many of these financial institutions, they would go out into neighborhoods and teach financial literacy courses because it's a requirement for banking institutions to be able to do so. When I first started out in my banking career, I thought that was awesome. I thought like, hey, go out into a neighborhood, you put in on these classes to where you're teaching people about financial literacy. Like, you're telling them about what they should do. And I thought that was sufficient for a while. But as I started to grow in my career and having a different vantage point and just life experiences, I started to become a little bit unimpressed, I guess you would say. I'm trying to find with the way that people talk about financial literacy. I felt that where it once was some work that was supposed to help people, it became a scenario to where you're talking at people. You're not taking the understanding of people's lived experiences of what they're going through to why they are deemed financially illiterate, right?
Right.
When banks started to grow, that personal touch went away from these institutions, and people were starting to become seen as just a number. And so you still have these requirements that you have to meet to get your CRA credit to ensure that you are, giving back to your community. So banks had where they once were like this white glove service. They were just like, hey, let me find a neighborhood, this poor, low income community, to say like, this is how we teach, we're going to teach you how to balance your checkbook. Well, that's not enough, right? And honestly, are you truly even helping them? Because you're talking at them, you're kind of reinforcing some negative stereotypes that they may already have about themselves. So it's like, I found that many people were, talking to and not having a conversation with people when it comes to financial literacy. So, one of my things is like, I'm on this journey to re-explore what does financial literacy look like? How do you have this conversation in a way that's uplifting and not condescending? And that you're actually empowering people to be able to take their finances under their control, have an understanding of what type of services that they can use, or, what not to go after, maybe payday loans or different things. Like, what's the impact? To, like, at least before you make a decision to whatever you're going to do, you have a significant understanding of what it is that you're about to what service that you're about to use. So that might have been a lot.
No, this is never too much here. I definitely want to hear all your expertise regarding all the subject matter we're going to discuss. And I think that's the great thing that you just brought up. And one thing I want to read in continuation is something that in doing research for this, because I want to, you're the expert, so I want to make sure I knew a little something before I, had this conversation. But something that stood out to me that I realized I didn't know a lot about was financial exclusion. And so I want to read something. I want to get your opinion on something. It says, minorities often resort to expensive financial services, such as check cashing stores, payday lenders, because there are fewer banks in their neighborhoods. There are roughly 41 financial institutions per 100,000 people in a white community, only to be compared to 27 in non-white majority communities. The financial institutions present in minority neighborhoods often make it difficult to open and maintain an account. For example, a bank may require higher account balances to eliminate service charges or a larger minimum account balance. In talking about financial exclusion, can you break down for me the ways that it plagues minority communities and exactly what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things. The broader term that I try to use, because financial exclusion is like the lack of, right? So when you have a lack of, there's a term called banking deserts, right? And banking deserts are communities, typically low income or minority communities, that have a lack of traditional banking services, right? So instead of having the traditional banks that you would see, they are plagued with check cashing businesses, payday loan places,
Everywhere you look,
pawn shops. These are predatory lenders, right? And the reason why I say predatory lender, because many of these people, you see all the advertisement on TV or the radio when you're in your car. Hey, you need quick money now, come in here and get a payday loan. Like your payments could be low as $20, a month. Well, that's just interest. And that's where financial literacy can come in, is understanding what the difference between an interest payment only and an interest payment plus your principal, which brings down your total loan balance. But what happens is that many minority communities live in places that are considered banking deserts, and they lack that access to traditional financial service models. So for me, I did some work to map that out, right? With some of I did this project through Bank Black USA with the University of Kansas, and we mapped out where these banking deserts were across the country. And what we have found out is that the overlap is that, like you said, like they are they're in communities that are minority, low income, and they don't have access to the service provider. So you're literally already boxing people into a box that they don't even realize sometimes that they're in. And you're doing targeted ads to these people saying that, hey, come here to cash your check. Like, we're only going to charge you 5%. Well, you're taking from a pot that's already, limited as it is. But but this is by design in many scenarios, right? You have banks who have deemed communities not profitable, because that's what the bank is here to do, is to turn a profit before anything else. They're here to make money.
Absolutely.
And so they don't go into certain communities. And when they don't go into these communities, that means that now this community has to figure out where can they bank? How can they cash their check? How, you have entrepreneurs in the area who would be without access to traditional lending service, products and services. So banking deserts is something that absolutely plagues us. That financial exclusion does limit the ability to move forward, and it's something that needs to be addressed head on. And I believe that at a minimum, the big financial institutions out there need to do a better job when it comes to servicing all communities and not just the communities that they deem profitable, because as we do know, Black and other communities, we have a lot of spending power out there, right? There's a lot of untapped potential, but because they don't know, they may not be aware of the services that are, that are out there to help advance themselves. Like, it keeps them in this perpetual negative cycle.
Right. Do you think that to combat or alleviate this financial exclusion, or what's the word? Banking deserts, what can help? Do you think that there should be some laws in place? Do you think what do you think can help alleviate that issue?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, at a minimum, we need to be able to, there needs to be a law that's in place that's going to reel in these predatory lenders like the check cashing places, the pawn shops, the payday loan centers. I feel like there needs to be a total eradication of the payday loan centers because they are not providing the service that, you know, intended of what people think that they're doing. They're targeting communities. I feel like there needs to be a our radio stations need to find other things to be able to market on the radio instead of like this, hey, get rich fast, or, you know, solve your scenario really fast. Now, I won't say that there are people who use these payday loan centers and it is a benefit to them, but they should not have to be in those places. There should be a change in the underwriting policies of financial institutions to be able to, when it comes to like looking at credit, taking more into account instead of just your credit score. I feel like they need to be able to see a fuller picture of you. How are you managing maybe your day-to-day bills that are not credit, impacted? I believe that we need to have more institutions, obviously, in these communities that are banking deserts. And I feel like my solution was, and belief is that we need to have more credit unions because those are community. They're built by the community for the community. We need to expand the access to these institutions. We need to be able to, when it comes to the minority depository institution, we need to raise the awareness that there are Black-owned banks and credit unions, and like not just Black-owned, but there's a whole bunch of minority depository financial institutions, these community banks that are there that can be able to offer you services. But again, these institutions need to be able to revisit their underwriting laws to be able to make it more accessible for other people, because credit has always been a barrier for many people to be able to do the things that they need to do. So I feel like those are some of the things that I think that needs, my personal opinion, that should be revisited. Also, there's a bill that's sitting in Congress right now from the 116th session, which I believe that was back in 2019. It's called the HR 41. It's called the Rescue Act, and this is a law that's meant to be able to strengthen minority depository banks and community banks, expanding the type of reach that they can have, and to be able to help empower the communities, like specifically minority and specifically low to moderate income communities. They call them LMI communities. That's just an acronym that's out there, so you may hear about it. But there's so many things that need to be done, and then it's first, but the onus is upon the larger financial institutions first to be able to expand their services, right? Those are things that need to be done, and then the uplifting of minority banks that have been filling the gap that these larger institutions have, in my opinion, intentionally moved away from, because they don't find those communities to be profitable.
And let me just take a moment here to provide some validity to what you're saying, because of course I've known you for years, so I know what your history is professionally. And I know some people probably listening, they've heard me use this term expertise, and they're listening to you, and clearly anybody listening to this is going to be like, he really sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So I need the people to really understand your level of expertise. So I can brag about my friend all day long, but I want you to run down your resume, because you just talked a lot about the larger big banks and you worked for them for years. So this is someone who knows what he's talking about. He was a part of these entities for years. So run down your resume quickly for people.
So I've been in the banking industry since 2003. For me, it was something I started off just to pay the bills, because I was a full-time student at the same time, and I was a full-time worker. Where I started working in the back office, entering refunds into the system to make sure that they, things are processing. My front facing into retail banking was working inside of a grocery store bank. I did that for a couple of years, moved up to a supervisor and trainer role. Then I got an opportunity to move into a larger bank, which was Washington Mutual, that ended up, through the financial collapse, we know that it failed, and it was bought out by JP Morgan Chase. I had the opportunity to expand into being a licensed banker, to be able to talk about investments and did that type of work, which was really, it helped me expand my understanding of the banking industry as a whole. And then during that time, I also had an opportunity to, our fraternity, we had something called the Kappa Alpha Psi Federal Credit Union. And that was in existence for a couple of years. With many of the other financial institutions, they did not survive because of the regulations there was not built to help support an institution that was operating on a volunteer basis. So there was that support from these agencies weren't there. So I had an opportunity to be firsthand to see how a credit union gets built off the ground. And that was a fantastic experience. And I talk highly about that. But then I got the opportunity to move into business banking. I worked at a local bank here in Uptown Dallas called Sterling Bank, which was eventually bought out by Comerica Bank. So I had the opportunity to work with not just personal customers who come in here with their everyday banking. I gradually moved into the space of working with small business, banking. And from there, from Comerica, I went to a bank called Citibank. Citibank, I moved up the ladder and became a operations manager.
Sure did.
And so I got to understand the internal mechanics behind how institutions run, and how they keep afloat, and then the impact that it can have on the customer. And most recently, my last job in banking was where I moved to Capital One, and I was working in the private banking underwriting. So I expanded my role, and I was working with customers who were high net worth,
coins,
who were taking out loans to finance stadiums, to finance businesses. I got to see firsthand what changes between customers when at this certain income level to customers at a higher income level. And I managed their portfolio. I did that for about 5 years until 2018. And then I kind of moved, where I was starting to get a little frustrated with the institutions, where I was telling you a little bit earlier about the impact that they're actually having in the community. I started working on the Project Bank Black USA. And from there, I got to be able to go in an advocacy route, to be able to say that, yes, I was working for the institution, so I have a deep understanding of how banks and credit unions work. But now I want to show how institutions can work for them.
Right.
And so,
but don't go too far into Bank Black, because I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah.
I'm very proud and excited of the work you're doing with that. And I think what is amazing is that Killer Mike, those who know of him as a rapper, some may know of him as an activist. I know especially here in the South, we know him for both. But he was very big when the whole Black Lives Matter thing just really took off. I believe it was 2016. And things just really took off. He was doing town hall meetings. I know he did a thing with BET where he was asking a lot of us to bank Black. And I know it led to a big increase in deposits. For example, I know there was 8,000 new accounts at Atlanta's Black-owned Citizen Trust Bank. There was one United Bank where they were receiving $3 million in deposits at branches across the country. Then you had Carver Bank where there was $2.4 million in deposits. And a lot of this was started by this movement that Killer Mike used his platform to really just thrust it into the forefront. And then I started to hear about you, my friend, with this Bank Black USA, which I very excited and proud that he was featured in Forbes magazine. If y'all want to go find it, it was in, what's this say, September 2020. I think he tried to sneak it by me, but I pulled the receipts. I was very proud of my friend that he was in Forbes magazine, because it really is, even if I didn't know you as a person, I think it's amazing what you are doing with Bank Black USA, because I feel like even I learned a lot when it comes to the banking deserts, when it comes to Black-owned banks. I never even thought of banking Black. I didn't even know that. I'm gonna be honest and say I was naive and not even knowing that was something that exists. I never even knew we as Black people even had that opportunity to own banks, and shame on me. But when it comes to Bank Black USA, explain to the people what is Bank Black USA and what ignited that fire in you to create and be so dedicated to this movement. Because it's an amazing thing what you guys do.
Well, again, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me personally. You have absolutely been one of my biggest advocates in here, and I can't thank you enough for that.
Absolutely.
Talking to you and just kind of brainstorming, and
we have always supported each other. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So so just to kind of set the scenario of what kind of led to this, right? So when I started becoming a little bit more critical of what the role that bigger financial institutions were playing in the community was around that time of 2016, was in my final 2 years of working at that last bank that I was at. So we know that there was those deadly police shootings in 2016, right? It was an awakening of the community to say that it is not enough for us to be the ones who call out when injustice is being done to our communities, right? It's the onus is also upon these institutions to say that we hear what's being said, and to do something about it.
Absolutely.
So you have an awakening of people who are being more conscious about where they spend their money. What the institutions that they support, right? So what happened in 2016 in response was saying that, well, these financial institutions these larger financial institutions are propping up initiatives that are to our detriment, specifically to the Black community's detriment. You have banks who are funding private prisons. You have banks who have a history of financing the slave trade, just from all the way further back. But in a current sense, like I said, you're funding private prisons. You're funding projects that have a negative environmental impact. Things like the Dakota Pipeline Access they were going to literally run a pipeline through many of the Black communities across the country to be able to get oil, the type of oil from Canada all the way down to the ports of New Orleans, and to be able to ship it throughout the country.
Right.
And so they, without taking into consideration the communities that they were uprooting, and many of those communities have been Black and other indigenous communities. So with the knowledge of knowing that these institutions have been doing that, there was that call to action saying that, hey, if you support me, put your dollars where your mouth is.
Absolutely.
How do you be able to make a change? And if you're not, we will divest from you. We will move our money to institutions who are more likely to support us. So as you said, Michael Rainier, Killer Mike, he started this campaign of saying, move your money, to institutions that serve us. And so a group of us, we met on Twitter of all places, right? And I saw the conversation being—
Really? I didn't know that. Y'all met on Twitter?
Yeah, we met on Twitter.
Okay.
And I, like you, I did not have me being in banking, I still did not have a knowledge of Black-owned financial institutions. I'm like, where are they at? Where's some information about them? Let me learn about them. And that information was disjointed. It was all over the place. There was, unless you went to the FDIC and you had this clear understanding of how to be able to use their tools, you did not know where these institutions were. So we were like, well, what can we do, to be able to help people facilitate this Move Your Money campaign to find out where these institutions are. So we created something called Bank Black USA. And what it started off, it was the goal of Bank Black USA was to kind of be a database, a hub of information for people who are wanting to be able to move their money. We wanted to be able to provide people with resources for them to be able to establish financial health, develop some economic stability, potentially build wealth using Black-owned institutions, right? So our original website in 2016 was just a list of where the banks were across the country.
Right.
We sourced our information from the FDIC, and we created this list that we found out that people love. Like, people were sharing it. They were texting about it, people were, and for me, this whole process is a journey for me as well, because like I said, I had even with my banking experience, I had a limited understanding of these institutions. Right. So we realized that that's not enough to just have a list, right? That's available on the internet. So without any coding experience, we created something called the Bank Black USA app in 2017. And what that app did, that's currently available on Apple and Google Play.
Love all your stuff. Go ahead.
The app put it in your hand in real time to say that we created a geolocational tool to where you can type your zip code in, or you can see a map of it and say that, well, where's the nearest institution to me? And not only where's the nearest institution, what products and services do they offer? Mm-hmm. And then there was a way that you can compare these institutions with one another. And then we created a rating system, right? Because I tell everybody this off the bat, I'm not in the business of trading one oppressor for the next, right? So what I mean by that is that I'm not here to rubber stamp these Black-owned banks and credit unions, because if there's something that they're not doing, we're going to call it out. But the way that I call it out is saying it's an opportunity for improvement, right? So we rate them based on how good is your online banking platform? What's your access, your access to ATMs? How are you giving back to the community that you serve?
Right.
So we created this type of algorithm that rated these banks based on what they had. So it would give you like in education, an A, B, C, D, or F, ranking. And so we created that tool that it became pretty successful. People were utilizing it a lot to help. The goal was to be able to help people who have answered this call to action to move their money, to be able to make a more informed decision about where they're moving their money. We're not a financial institution on our own. We don't even claim to be, but our goal is to be able to create these resources to be able to help people make that informed decision. Because there was a statistic floating around saying that Black people have over $1.3 trillion in spending power. Well, how do you use that spending power? Where do you move your money? That was our initial conversation. Mm-hmm. But from there, we noticed we had to fill a gap, right? There's websites like NerdWallet, Betterment, all these institutions to where you can go in there and to be able to find a bank and what's going on. You didn't see the Black-owned banks there. You didn't see the Black-owned credit unions. And if you did, you had to dig way back into the back of the website to be able to find it. They were not front-facing. So we said, we'll do that. We'll do the work. And so that's what we have been doing for the last 5 years. We've been creating tools and resources to help people make these more informed decisions. And that's where we got into that project with University of Kansas, to where we were mapping out the banking deserts and being able to articulate what that is. We were putting on community events across the country, because it's not just me. It's a group of us, a group of co-founders. Like, we have two of my co-founders, Rob and Chris, they live in Atlanta. I have three co-founders who live in NYC, Latoya, Justin, and John, and another one who lives in Detroit. His name is Chris as well. And so we all have these different backgrounds, but we came together because we wanted to be able to be solution oriented and create tools that are going to be able to empower our community. So we started doing that work, and it's been a journey, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of work that has been done to be able to create these tools. So like I told you about University of Kansas, 4 years later, like I would say last year, we started off a partnership with University of Michigan to where we created this interactive, over the summer, we created this interactive map that not only tells you kind of what you will see on the mobile application about where the banks are scattered across the country, but you can do a deep dive into the community to learn about the health of that community. Like, you can see the poverty rates, you can be able to see the educational rates in that community. You can see a whole bunch of statistics to show you the impact that these financial institutions are having. So after we saw that project was pretty successful, so we moved into a new project that started in the fall, and that's going to this particular stage of the project ends this semester, to where we're creating a Bank Black performance dashboard. And what that dashboard is going to be able to do is it's going to build upon the interactive map that we have, but it's also going to give you a deep dive to be able to kind of visualize data in a way that's easily digestible. So not only will you be able to see where these institutions are across the country, you're going to be able to see the impact that they have, their performance, right? So here's a little fact, is that if you look at the top 4 banks, Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, Citi, like they all have over $2 trillion in assets at a minimum, which means that they're they're massive institutions with a lot of access to capital and resources. Well, Black banks did not experience that same boom that these other ones did, because these main banks that we know about, they were propped up and supported by government agencies, like sometimes to the fault and the detriment of underrepresented communities, to say the least. So if you look at the largest Black bank, it doesn't even have $1 billion in assets. And what does that mean?
That's what I was thinking, yeah. Because I think the biggest bank only has, 800 and something million or somewhere around there?
Yeah, so it's less than $1 billion that they have. And that is with a combined, there are 2 banks that merged, right? Broadway and the City First, I believe. And what they don't even have $1 billion in assets. And what does that mean, right? So that means that when the institution does not have access to capital, that limits the things that they can do, the investments that they can make into their technology, the people that they can hire. Do they have, how many locations do they have across the country? Can they expand their footprint? Can you live in Texas but bank at a bank that's in Michigan? So when you have that, when you don't have that access to capital, it limits the amount of things that you can do, and you see closures, because in 2001, there was over 50 of these financial institutions across the country, right? And then when we got started in 2016, there was less than 23. So many of them dropped and fell off because either they just couldn't survive the economic climate, right? They had to merge with other institutions, or they got absorbed by a bigger bank. And so like a bigger non-Black bank, right? So, it wasn't Black owned or controlled. So currently we want to be able to, while we're going with a data approach, and the importance of that is like, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't lie, right? So, but with that data, you can be able to get an accurate picture, because you have so many people who are finding reasons not to support institutions of color because, of bias and I would say, racism, like, oh, they don't know how to handle money. I need to move my money to somebody else who knows how to do it. Well, these institutions know how to do it too, but what's the problem? They don't have the access to capital, and then they don't have investments from larger corporations and companies and government agencies who have moved their funds there, because and this is just show you how you have to evolve with the times. When we started off the campaign, to move your money, it was a focus on deposits, right? Moving these deposits over to these institutions. Right. And over the years, it went up and down. But what we found out is that banks were like, this is great. Thank you for moving these deposits, but we need loans on the book, because with deposits, banks have to pay that interest to the customers. With loans, they can be able to make money to be able to reinvest it, what they should be doing, to reinvest it into their internal structures to be able to create additional tools that make, that enhance the banking experience that you had. So the performance dashboard is going to be able to give you like a rolling average of how banks are performing year over year. So you can see the financial health of that institution. But that what we're also going to have, and we're pulling information from the SBA and other governmental reports to where we're going to be able to see the impact that they're having. Well, how are you actually lending to the communities that are within your footprint? Because like I said, not trading one oppressor for the next. So if you're not doing well, we're just gonna make it transparent so you can be able to see. So the person, you can still choose a bank with them, but you'll have a more accurate understanding of what's going on. So absolutely. That tool is going to come available next month, and so at the end of April, maybe beginning of May. So I'm excited to be able to announce that as well.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you shared that with us, but also talking about just people not giving Black banks a chance. Something that you talked about in your Forbes interview, which I think was glad to read. I think it would be good for people to know this. What do you say to those who state that Black-owned financial institutions can't get government-insured loan funds the way the white-owned banks can because they aren't perceived as being able to manage that capital properly?
Right. It's a myth, right? So if you give them the chance, they can do it, right? They have the ability to be able to handle these funds, but it's just something embedded into society to where Black banks and credit unions have been considered these lenders and bankers of last resort. Like, like we're going to try to explore every other institution before we even give some of these a chance. And our goal is to be able to, with data, to be able to show how these institutions can do the same thing, and if not offer a better experience than these larger banks who look at you as just a number.
Absolutely.
I believe in having this approach where it comes to, it's called a triple bottom line approach, and it's like people, planet, and profit. Like I'm always, no matter what, people over profit any day, all day. But yes, so that we want to be able to change that these institutions are just as good as anybody else, but you don't give them a chance because of, not all scenarios, but people be like, oh, they're Black owned. Like I'm not going to do that. Like they're not going to know how to manage my money. I'm going to have an issue.
And we as Black people, a lot of times say the same thing about these banks that are owned by people who look like us. So it's not even just the white people.
Yeah, because I mean, you have stories just as recently to show that there was a story about the CEO of Wells Fargo. He literally was saying that the reason why they don't have Black talent in leadership is because they can't find Black people who can handle those roles. Basically, and this is paraphrasing, right? Yeah. So it's not, but it was incorrect. Mm-hmm. I can say as myself, as somebody who's been in the industry long, I'm like, you're talking about people who look like me, and like myself, I can handle those roles. I'm not interested in them, but there are talent out there, and we will continue to have this negative impact on the community if you do not diversify, what your leadership looks like. So we have, that kind of brings me into something that we just launched that people may not know about, is that we have a track to where we are working with Black banks and credit unions to be able to amplify the work that they're doing. But there is a growing community who is not interested in that financial model anymore. A lot of people who are getting disgusted with capitalism as a whole. So like our goal is to continue to evolve and have an understanding of what's going on. So we started a 501c3 called the Coward Initiative. And that was back in 2018 because we needed a vehicle as we're continuing to do the work that we're doing, a vehicle in which Bank Black USA sits. Right. And so what Coward stands for is cooperative wealth, reinvestment, and empowerment. And the goal of that is to be able to share with people a alternative financial model with group economics. And we see examples of that, to where you have these things called susus, like these lending circles, to where you've seen a lot of it. Like, a lot of people pull their money into a resource, and then, like, they take it out and, like, use that money and then repay it. So there's a history of using different financial models in our community. And our goal is to be able to explore cooperatives and other ways to be able to obtain and build generational wealth through land ownership and so on. So we started a partnership in January with North Carolina State University. There's a professor by the name of Professor Kofi Boone. He's teaching a class, and our nonprofit, our 501c3, is the final project in there. And so by the end of the semester, we're going to do something similar to what we did with Bank Black USA, and we're going to map out the histories of Black cooperatives across the country, from post-slavery all the way into current, and show how not only immigrant communities who come into this country, but Black community has a resource, which we all know, of, like, pooling our resources together, because, we know that we can, in certain scenarios, be stronger together. Right. And, like, so we want to be able to create a model to be able to show people what that looks like using data. And so we're gonna unveil that in the next couple of weeks. So nice. it will probably be around the same time that as the Bank Black USA map comes out. And that's going to give people an additional tool, template of what it looks like to pool your resources together, because group economics is becoming a thing. A financial version of a cooperative is credit unions. They're built by the community for the community. So we're going to create some additional tools that I feel that is going to be beneficial to the community, and I can't wait to share those.
I'm definitely glad you say that. And one thing that comes to my mind, I know you spoke a lot about credit unions. I know here in Florida, we have a credit union called Space Coast Credit Union. And I remember back in the day, it was really only like in Brevard County, like literally. And I remember my grandparents were some of the first customers, to the point where the bank account number was only like 5 digits. Like, that's just how long she was with the bank. And they have now, because of, I feel, the impact that Black Lives Matter and Bank Black has really had on our community. I think that credit union, first of all, they employ a lot of people of color. I can say that. And I think that it's really sent a message all the way to the top. Because when I tell you that this credit union has gone from being in just Brevard County to now it is all over Central and South Florida. When I was going to FIU, there was no Space Coast Credit Union. Space Coast Credit Union was only back home in Brevard. Stephone, Space Coast Credit Union now is all over freaking Miami. All over Miami, all over Fort Lauderdale, Daytona Beach, which is still part of Central Florida. And I think it's amazing. And when you paint this picture of what credit unions do and how they benefit the community, it makes me think, this is why I continue to see more and more Space Coast Credit Union. This is why I see more and more people of color moving their banks from the Wells Fargos and the city banks and going to Space Coast Credit Union, because I can say that I do know they give scholarships and they do a lot for the community. So I definitely want to big up Space Coast Credit Union for anyone who listens to this. But also, one question, I could be kind of random. Have you ever seen the movie called The Banker?
Yeah.
Okay, I should have known you've seen it. Because I was going to tell you, if you didn't see it, you need to see it. Because I was intrigued. Just historically, another level what our people went through when it came to just trying to have some kind of financial wealth and stability. And what got me was, remember the part of the movie where Anthony Mackie and Samuel Jackson, the white guy, became the face. Mm-hmm. They were doing all the work and they trained him. Mm-hmm. But yet, because of the time that we lived in at that time, and because he was white, he had to be the face. And I thought that was just so profound, because in many aspects, wouldn't you say that I think aspects of that still exist today in many industries, not even just banking?
Absolutely. That is still pervasive today, that because of skin color, that means, your knowledge, that for some reason that you're ignorant to the fact of things, like there's a history of banks redlining, not providing people loans and services just because of what they look like. And, you know, of saying that, hey, you know what, we're going to use this highway. And if you live on this side of the highway or this side of the train tracks, we're going to designate that community as unbankable, to say the least. Like, you know, to say that we, you know, these people cannot benefit from our services that we have. You have this history of things like that happening. So movies like that are just kind of illuminating what many people are having across the country. You have people today who have the credit, they have the wherewithal, the understanding to managing businesses, but they can't get loans because, you know, in some cases there's still this it's who you know type thing, like, you know, to be able to give you get you access to the credit that you need to be able to scale up your business, right? So there's so much stuff that has to be able to change, and that's why I continue to be able to support this movement. It's an ecosystem that we're creating, because to your point, like, you know, you have the Black Lives Matter movement that, you know, is saying honoring our, you know, Black Lives Matter too, you know, as well. We're not saying that yours don't matter, you know, but it's saying that.
But I was watching, what did I watch today? It was something on Netflix or something I was watching, and they said, so funny you said this. We was talking about her earlier. Dr. Heavily, Married to Medicine. Mm-hmm. And the way that she explained to her son was that we're not saying that white lives, blue lives, that they don't matter. The point is they've always mattered. We're the ones who never mattered. So that's why the focus is on us. And she compared it to the fact that as a dentist, if you come into her office and your tooth hurt, or you have an infection, she's going to treat that tooth. She's not going to treat the whole mouth. She's going to treat that tooth. The rest of those teeth are fine. Mm-hmm. White people, they fine. Cops, they're fine. They're going to be okay. They're going to always exist. They're going to always thrive. We haven't always been able to. And so that's why the focus has to be on us. And I think that's a great way to explain, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know. And one thing that also comes to my mind is we have a fraternity brother. I can show you more details offline, but we have a fraternity brother. And you know how, because of technology, you can go ahead and get pre-approved for car loans and stuff like that just from filling out stuff over the computer. So he has a name that if you saw it on paper, you wouldn't think that he was a person of color. And he has been very responsible when it comes to his credit and just how he lives his life. So he has a really nice credit score because he took his academics and life very serious. He has a really, really nice job with a nice income. Yeah. So he goes and get pre-approved for a JAG. Now remember what I told you about his name. You're not going to look at his name. People who even see color, not going to look at his name and think he look like me and you. Mm-hmm. Pre-approved, you know, they responded back to him immediately because of his credit score and what he wanted to pay down. Responded to him immediately, was blowing his phone up to get him to come out there as fast as possible. You know how the salespeople can be.
Oh yeah.
So call him on the phone. He's scheduled to go out there. Thought it was complete fraud because when he got out there, he was a colored person. Did not believe that he was the same person that filled out all that application stuff online. Did not believe him. Had him show all kind of levels of proof of identification to prove that that was his social security number that he put in there, to prove that in fact this is his name. All because of what he looked like. You thought it was absolutely impossible, for somebody like me and you to have the income he had, he's in our age group, and to have the credit score that he had. He went through all that, taught that salesman a real good lesson, took his ass somewhere else and got the same goddamn car and got it for a lower, you know, discount. So I'm pretty sure the owner that dealership, if it even made it to his attention, I'm pretty sure he was pissed off because they missed out on a huge sale. But that's just the craziness that even in 2020, well, they happened in 2020, but even today, that's crazy the level that we still go through as far as hurdles and holding us back simply off of what we look like. Don't know shit about us, but simply off of what we look like.
And that is something that I want to be able to tackle through what we are doing with our different initiatives with Bank Black USA and the Coward Initiative, because they're there's always going to be this example of like, you know, of people who were discriminated against because of stuff like that. And so my goal on our end, using data and creating, you know, resources to be able to try to offset those things, because it shouldn't, first of all, it shouldn't happen in the first place.
Correct.
It's disgusting that it still happens.
Right.
You know, so we need to be able to change that. So like when it comes to what we've been doing is like, we want to be able to highlight the institutions that are who have an anti-racist policy. But and let me say this, because I feel like I have to, because through our work where I've experienced, you know, some version of this, like people have called the movement racist, that what we're doing.
Really?
They've said that like how are you talking about bank black? Like, you know, that's racist. Like, you know, and I'm like, one, it's not. Banking black means that we're saying we're supporting institutions that are owned and operated by, you know, black people, but anybody can bank there. There's not saying that they don't want your, you know, your relationship. So it's, you know, I feel like we have to address that. And you know, what I tell people is that banking is also a very intimate process, right? You have to when I tell people, do not feel overwhelmed to say that you have to move all your money at once. You don't. You're like, but you have to. Banking is what is convenient for you,
right,
and what you're able to do. So, you know, absolutely. Like if you could move all your money, fantastic. But if you can only move a savings account or like, you know, a checking or open a credit card with these institutions, because I would tell you that through our comparison tool, you'll see that many of these black-owned banks and credit unions offer the same, if not better, rates than the bigger banks out there. So they're on par. And like, you know, so the goal is to you know, to raise awareness around that, and then also encourage these black-owned banks to continue to be leaders in their field and provide additional resources, because the banking industry as a whole is just a conservative industry. There's not a lot of innovation that happens. You have fintech companies; these are financial technology companies like Cash App, Square, you know, PayPal, you know, who are disrupting that for good or bad. Like, you know, that's still yet to be determined. But banks have to, as a whole, to innovate and start creating solutions that are going to empower as opposed to widen this gap, you know, which sometimes can be referred to as that racial wealth gap, you know, widen that gap out there. So yeah, like there's a lot of work that has to be done, and we feel that our role in it is just to kind of amplify what's going on in creating tools and resources that can help you make a more informed decision.
And I think it's amazing. And I keep thinking about the journey and just the advocacy that you and your team have done with Bank Black USA, because to go from starting from just a Twitter conversation to just having a list of banks, to now you have a rating system, you have an app, you have all these additions, and it's just growing and growing. And I want people to understand, I'm glad you've shared all this information, because it really brings light the importance and why, and in a very detailed way that is specific to our community. And so I want everybody who listens to this to, even if they choose not to move over all of their money, like you said, get a credit card or move over the savings account, at least I think it will behoove you and benefit you to get more knowledge as myself, and at least download the app, see the data and the research for yourself, you know, study and show yourself approved, you know, so you don't have to just go by somebody's word. All of the data, all the stats are there available through the site, through the app. And I think it's great that everyone can take the time out and really educate themselves more on the banks. And I think it's so great about the rating system. I wanted to ask you, did you notice by chance that any particular geographical area had lower rated banks than others, or it kind of varied?
It really varies, because Well, geographically, most of the banks are on the East Coast. The and like from New York all the way down to Florida. You have a few that are kind of sprinkled here across the South. Um, so it kind of like varies about where they're located, but across the board there's opportunities for them all to improve, and the way to be able to do that is to get these corporations to move their loans there, move their books there. I mean, because like, who can't do better? They all can do better, right?
Right.
You know, there's some that are who are performing very well, like banks like One United, who has moved to a more digital bank. They went away from that brick and mortar.
Down here.
Like, so you have those institutions that are doing that, and now thankfully I'm looking forward to see what the data tells us in the next year or two, because you have this call to action with the killing of George Floyd, the murder of
Right.
George Floyd, be more specific, is that you have this call to action to where let's move our money to, again, black banks are now starting to get a renewed interest. People are no longer accepting these statements of support from like financial institutions, like move your money.
Right.
So what we have seen is institutions like Netflix, like they're now starting to bank.
I read about them, so that's true.
Netflix moved
that is awesome.
They moved a percentage of their money over into a black financial institution. You have PayPal moves their money.
That's
Oracle.
love some PayPal. Yeah.
Yes, Biogen, like so many corporations and institutions are now starting to look at Bank Black USA. Well, not necessarily Bank Black USA, but people are using our tools and resources to be able to help them make a more informed decision where they're moving their money. And people. So our traffic site is exploded. Like, we have a lot of people who are using the tool across the country. We have, a lot of people who reach out to us asking us specific questions, and there's always opportunity for us to improve. So I always tell people, what do you want to see? Like, what kind of information do you want to see on the website to help you make a more informed decision? Because we not only want people, the consumers, we want businesses
Absolutely.
to be able to move their funds and starting to have a more expansive relationship with these institutions. And I feel that, by the end of this year, we're going to start to see a difference. And that's why we're creating those tools that we are creating to actually measure the impact that's being had. So like, there's going to be more to come there.
And it's meeting a need. When you have the dashboard and you have the rating system, it's meeting the need to properly inform your community. One thing I came across in doing research with this is the list of black banks that exist. And so I definitely want to run through the list for people who may be listening and have no idea there may be one in their town or their city. You have Alla America Bank, which is in Birmingham, Alabama. You have Citizen Trust, located in 15 cities across the U.S. Columbia Savings and Loan, that's in actually Milwaukee, Wyoming. You have Commonwealth National Bank. They have 2 locations in Mobile, Alabama. Mobile is so small. Mobile, Alabama. But I love Mobile, so I want to buy this thing. I don't like Mobile. Broadway Federal Bank, 2 locations in Los Angeles, California, and 1 in Inglewood, which is dope because we know that's saturated with our people.
If anybody watched Insecure, Broadway, like I think it was like maybe season 1 or 2, like Issa highlighted Broadway Bank.
Because then the guy that she was dealing with, he worked at it, right?
I believe so. I believe that's what it was.
You know what? And she knew what she was doing. I'm sure she knew what she was doing when she put that in the show too. You have Carver State Bank, 2 in Savannah, Georgia. Carver Federal Savings Bank, you have 3 in New York. Columbia Savings and Loan, also in Milwaukee. GN Bank in Chicago. First Independence Bank, 2 are in Michigan. Harbor Bank of Maryland in Maryland, 3 in Maryland actually. Liberty Bank and Trust, they have 10 across the U.S. Not sure what cities, but they're across
the Lowlands, Mississippi, and Kansas, I believe. So they've been expanding they really focus on a lot of commercial stuff. So yeah.
Oh, good. Then you have Industrial Bank. They have multiple locations in New York, New Jersey, and Maryland. One United, they have them in 3 cities across the US. I know we have one down here in Miami. And then you have Tri-State Bank of Memphis, of course. You have Unity National Bank. They have them in Texas and Georgia. And then United Bank of Philadelphia is, of course, in Philadelphia. So I just want to highlight any of those in case, anyone who listens are in those cities. And I think that's amazing. I guess for me, I've always been captivated and proud that you have someone like yourself that at a young age, when you're in your 20s, you have really been a lover of numbers. Like you love numbers. You love how numbers come together and banking and just, you have really taken your life and things you've been through have not gotten in the way of you giving back to the community. The way that you have utilized your personal experience and your education and saw a need. You walked away from a very successful career in banking, from working for the large corporations. You saw a need. You saw there was a problem, and you had enough courage and faith in yourself and your capabilities to walk away. And the way that God has allowed you to not just bless and benefit your community, because you started with your circle of friends. I remember when you first told me about it, and it even blessed and educated me. And then look how you branched off throughout the country. I mean, and then you're in Forbes magazine, and then I'm not going to run through all your resume and tell your business, but you're doing some things on an independent level that you are your own boss. Like you're the HB head nigga in charge. Well, I don't want you to say the N word. Sorry, you're the head person. Like you're really taking this and really made something of yourself. And it's an amazing thing because you could have still been, at the major corporation working the 9 to 5 or whatever you was doing. That is amazing.
It has been a journey, to say the least, right? Because there have been many sleepless nights. Like anything that you see is stuff that we put in on our own. It hasn't been funded by anybody. There's no large investments. We've had to learn how to code on our own. We've had to leverage relationships like with Justin Nash. Like he built out our website, our Bank Black USA website. So that's another fraternity brother of mine who's doing incredible work. Like if you need a graphic designer or website builder,
I remember when you referred me to him, I'm like, oh, his stuff is amazing.
But like it takes effort, right? Because with so many movements, you see is that people like on the ground who are doing the work, they don't get that recognition. I don't do it for the recognition, because if I did, we'd probably be having a different conversation. Like I'm pretty much the kind of behind the scenes type person. Like, you don't even have to ever know my name. Like, I'm okay with that.
Right.
But the work can be, it's rewarding in the final results, but it's a lot of effort, because there's been times to where there's been articles that have come out who've cited our work and who use our work but didn't cite us in papers. That's when
you really know you made it. That's when you really know you made it. They trying to take your stealer and don't give you credit.
And then you have scenarios to where, because I'm not famous, and nor am I trying to be, is that, you have these larger names coming in, they can kind of swoop in and just be like, oh, well, this is co-op, the work that's being done without giving credit where credit, could be due. So it's been a lot of sleepless nights. And through this journey, I've battled depression, anxiety, functioning off of 4 hours of sleep at night because the work has got to be done. And it's taught me a lot about myself and what is my capacity to what happens when I step out of my comfort zone. Right. And every day is not glorious. Some people be like, hey, you were you know, you were featuring here. I'm like, man, you just don't understand the lack of sleep and the lack of stuff that I.
Because you were so humble when I mentioned it to you. Because by the way, y'all, this is my friend all these years. He did not tell me he was in Forbes magazine. I had to find out on my own. And when I mentioned it to him, he was so humble about it. Whereas with me, you know me, I'm a different kind of friend. Baby, you put me in Forbes magazine, baby, I'm finna text all y'all the link. Go look at me in Forbes magazine. But you was so low key, like, this was way last year. I literally just found out a few weeks ago. But that's just the kind of person you are. Not to say I'm not humble, but baby, I need my friends to know my. You know, I want my friends to see me shine. You could care less because you really are that behind the scenes. Let me just do my work and make a difference. I can stay behind the scenes.
Because what I want people to know, and it's like, you know, I'll post it on my social media. You know, I'll say something about it here or there because, like, just to show that the work is happening. But it's like there's so much that goes into just a one story. It's like this is 5 years in.
Make it.
And like, you know, we went through, I would say 4 years of nobody even recognizing, some people even saying that what you're doing is silly, like, you know, or not believing in it. It's just like having to, like, wondering if we're really making an impact, if we're really making a difference to people. And it's like going through that, you know, that can take a toll on you, right? You know, like, so, you know, I, you know, recommend, you know, I'm an advocate for therapy. I'm an advocate for all that, because it's like, you have to be able to organize your thoughts and make, you know, and set some expectations with yourself to continue to move forward in this space. So it's like, it's been a journey, like, you know, like I'm thankful for, like, you know, the press that we get, but it's like, you know, people, like, they be like, oh, well, you're being, you know, you might be being braggy or you're doing something like that. So I'm just like, it's the work that, you know, that goes into it. It's like, you know, that's what I want people to know, is that these articles, you know, these features, they're fantastic because it helps you get the word out there. But it's like, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I still, to this day, if you're interested in the work that we're doing, like, this is bigger than me. It's bigger than all of us. So it's like, how can we have a community of people to get behind this and do this? And obviously a lot is like, I got to have faith. I got to believe, you know, God is going to carry me through this, because there's been so many days.
And he has, yeah, because, you know, we've talked about it, but yeah. And I those sleepless days, you tell me some 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you just not going to work, you know. I mean going to sleep and just.
Yes.
My day is ending, and your day, you still got meetings and stuff left. Like, I'm winding down watching TV. I'm texting my friend, like, what he doing? It's 10, 11 o'clock. He having meetings or he's doing work. Like, you really have been working the midnight oil. You have really been working extremely hard. And what I like about it is the passion.
Yeah.
When you know somebody, you could tell that they are authentically attached because of how they light up. The way you light up when you talk, well, of course, you talk about anything finances, you light up. But the way you light up when you talk about Bank Black USA, it is amazing. Because if people could just see the smile on your face the whole time you're talking about Black, you truly love not just what you're doing, what it represents, what it stands for, and what it can become. And you're really doing it from a true place. Like you said, you're not doing it for the recognition. You're not doing it for, you know, the lights, camera, action, or the whatever. You are really doing it out of pure need and advocacy for your community. And it shows in your dedication, your hard work. You can tell when somebody ain't BSing you.
Well, I appreciate that, because that means a lot to me. It's like, you know, the work is bigger than myself. It's like, we want to create tools that our community can be able to benefit from. And if that just means that I have to go a little bit harder and do the work, it's worth it. Because if one person can be able to benefit from it, I know that we're having an impact. And I know that this is going to continue to grow. There's going to be a lot more coming down the pipeline that that will be exciting work that we can announce soon, in addition to the 2 projects that we have on board. But
Right.
my goal is to just create resources for our people, because there's a lack of, there's larger institutions that should have been doing the work that have not been doing the work, and my goal is to be able to change the narrative. Like we're going to create the solution. If you're not going to do your part, we're going to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tell all the people once again, Blank Black USA is available on all. What? Tell the Google. What you call it? I'm an iPhone person now. What you call? What we call it?
The Apple Store.
Yeah, the Apple Store. Tell them where can we get this app from?
So you can get the app. The Bank Black USA app is available in Google Play Store and the Apple Store. There's also an online version of the app that's available at the website. So you can go to the drop down and you can see what the app looks like without actually even having to download the app. So we wanted to create something that's accessible for all people. If you want to know more about Bank Black USA, obviously go to bankblackusa.org. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn with the same the handle Bank Black USA. So you can go there, you can keep up with the work that's being done, and stay informed about the things that are coming down to the pipeline. You can even go to our website and sign up to be on a future mailing list that we'll be having, and that mailing list will be specifically, keep people up to date about what's happening in the world with news when it comes to these Black institutions, banks and credit unions, and also about the tools and resources that will be coming available. So if you want to keep up, you follow any of those handles and go to the website.
And also, because I support those who support me, those who go to my website or those who have been on my website, I have a section, Lord Jesus, a section called Supported Brands. And his is absolutely one of them. So if you go to that page on my website, which is RamonMarquisOfficial.com, RamonMarquisOfficial.com, for those who can't spell. You can go to there, Supported Brands. You will see Bank Black USA. When you click on, I have a little blurb that says a little bit about them, so you can know what you're clicking on, and it goes to their website and gives you all the information. So there's a lot of ways. You have my website, and you have all of those options he stated. I think Bank Black USA is an amazing thing. I'm excited. I will continue to support what you're doing, not just with this, but all stuff, how we do. And I'm just very excited for you, friend. I am proud of you because you have gone through your life stuff and still was so dedicated to this. And I've told you how it has inspired me going through my stuff, and it has lit the fire with me with my books, with this, with me going back to my philanthropy efforts. So I just thank you for not only what you've done for me and our friendship, but what you and your team is doing in the Black community. It is going to pay off. It is going to pay off big.
Because you inspire me every day. Like, your hustle, your grind is just like, it's out of this world. And I can yes, we
can talk about each other all day long.
Yes,
that's one thing we can do. We can brag about each other all day long, and I give kudos to my village, whether it consists of my friends, those who can see the visual, this woman that's in the background here, my grandmother, and just God. Because, without my village, and I know I could be stubborn, I know I could be hard-headed, but we ain't gonna, that's another interview, Stephone. We can talk about that later. I know I have ran you ragged, and we have ran each other ragged. But no, I really, my village, without my village, I don't think any of us will be where we are today, because God knows we've been through some stuff.
Amen.
But we can't do it alone. We can't go through life alone. And so I think that by us having a village and sharing it, because we don't go through stuff for no reason. It's to share. Our test can be a testimony. Our pain can be our purpose. And I think that's what we both are doing and have done. And I'm just excited for what the future has. So with that, I just want to thank you for doing this. You have enlightened and educated me. I'm sure people have listened to are going to benefit from this, because I think everybody needs and want financial stability and just to be more financial literate. So I thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge and doing this interview. It will not be the last time y'all hear from him, because he has many levels. He's a multi-layered, multifaceted person. So he's going to be back for some other stuff. But once again, thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you take care.
That's it.
Well, that's it for the zone today. We are officially shutting it down. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And until next time, remember this. If you have a goal, give an hour of every day to that goal. Holla.